Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. You join us at the end of game week 2, where Brighton and Albion sit proudly at the top of the table. Something I never thought I would particularly say. And yes, I know it's only 2 games into the season, but I am still absolutely here for it. We've just beaten Wolves. But before we get into that, let's see who we've got on the show tonight. We welcome Soni. Soni, my friend, how are you doing?
I'm doing a-okay. I even got new decorations for my room. So that's pretty cool.
We appreciate that as a the Albion Obsessed team. We like a good backdrop. So A for effort there, Sony. We love it. We love it. Chloe's looking behind again. I've got a curtain, but it's a great curtain, Chloe. Don't you dare change your curtain. We love it. We also welcome Dagan. Dagan, my friend, how are you keeping?
I'm doing just splendidly, wonderfully. Happy days.
I love it. And we also welcome Chloe and the aforementioned curtain. Chloe, how are you? How was your trip to the Black Country?
Yeah, it was pretty damn good, to be honest. Yeah, great game, great experience, lovely atmosphere, just brilliant. 10 out of 10.
And that's what we're here to talk about, that 10 out of 10 game day experience as Brighton and Hove Albion played Wolves at the Molineux. The last time that these two sides met, Sony, you got to see it in person. It was when Brighton demolished Wolves 6-0 in the Premier League. And as I say, Sony, you were there for that. It was your first experience of seeing Brighton and Hove Albion live. Were you confident that Brighton could put in another stellar performance against a team that many people are tipping to be there or thereabouts in a relegation fight this season?
Yeah, actually, I was definitely banking on it. Especially because it's Wolves. Like the Wolves have actually a special place in my heart. Even though we destroyed them last year. Sorry, Wolves fans. And then, them playing Manchester United and they're pretty good. I still was confident that we were gonna win. Like I couldn't imagine the margin. It could have been a tie for all we know. Um, but I mean, we did pretty well, and I was confident in the win from beginning to end.
I love that. I love that. Now, Dagan, just talking about that Manchester United game that Wolves played earlier in the week. At the end of the last podcast, me and you went out on a limb and we said, big score lines. After seeing that Wolves game against Manchester United, was there any sort of doubt creeping into your mind that it wouldn't be as easy as we perhaps foresaw it to be?
There was out there, and it was expressed a lot. It was not for me because I thought Man United looked poor, and the Wolves looked up to it for a first game out. But I did not think they matched our quality coming into the game. I thought we were not stellar in the first half. We can talk more about that. But we certainly showed our quality in the second half, and that was more what we expected. We didn't quite nail our predictions. You were 5-0, and I was 5-1, but looked pretty good there. It looked pretty good there for a stretch. Thought I was going to get 2 in a row, but it was I did not shy away. In fact, I said on several different platforms and several different places, I was sticking with my 5-1 prediction because I didn't think we were a lot different than the 6-0 win we had against them last time at our place. We were away, but that was what accounted for the difference between 6-0 and 5-1.
For one, I was very happy with how it all went. It was very close to my prediction, so I'm okay with that. Chloe, let's talk about the starting 11 then, because there were some changes in the squad from the side that convincingly beat Luton last time out. Webster, Gilmour, and Enciso came in for Jean-Paul Van Hecke, Dahoud, and Pedro out. Were there any surprises in the starting 11 for you this week?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised at the sort of amount of rotation, but I do think it is really good that we can afford to do that. Bringing in Gilmour for Dahoud. And I was very happy to see Gilmour get a start because he looked good in sort of his cameo against Luton, and also in pre-season I thought he looked really promising. So it was nice to see him get in the starting 11 and Enciso also. I think we've got so much attacking talent now. It is unreal. You think about who we had on the bench to bring on and who we didn't even bring on throughout the game. I just think it's yeah, it's really exciting at the moment as a Brighton fan. The amount of players we've got that can score goals and contribute. So yeah, I think the way that we can rotate is just going to be very important for us this season, going into sort of the European fixtures. So yeah, I was a bit surprised. It messed me up in my fan hub starting 11 prediction, but yeah, it's good that we can rotate.
It's all about the fan hub starting 11 prediction. But you're right. I mean, who would have thought it a few seasons ago when we were all crying out for attackers and strikers that we would have a wealth of players in those positions that can come on and just cause teams so much bother. Now, Sony, one player that starred so well in the 6-0 win last season and was omitted from the starting 11 to my great surprise last week was Billy Gilmour. And we will talk about his performance in more depth a bit later because it was an exceptional game. But were you excited to see Billy G back in the starting 11? A player, as I say, played ridiculously well against Wolves last time out.
Yes, absolutely. I've turned into a huge Gilmour fan, especially when I got to see him at the Amex earlier this year. I like the fact that like he was actually out there just trying to help the team out, doing whatever he could. And I always wanted to see more. We signed him, he disappeared for a little bit. We didn't know what happened to him. And then, come to find out that there were some like domestic issues that were happening. And I felt extremely bad. But now that those issues are out of the way, I feel like he's starting to come out of his shell a lot more. So he's starting to, do the really cool plays that we've always, we've always thought that he would do. I'm glad that he's gotten his chance, and I'm glad that RDZ is also giving him that chance to be like, all right, you're starting, go do your thing, and he's definitely performed up to expectation.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a really important player this season. I was down at the Amex today getting some shirts printed that you can see behind me here. I've got Dunk and March for audio listeners. And I was quite tempted to get Gilmour, but I just can't bring myself to get an 11 centre mid on the back of a shirt. It just feels so wrong. Dagan, let's talk about one big omission. That was João Pedro, who played very well against Luton Town last time out, lost his place to Julio Enciso. Some pre-match comments from Roberto De Zerbi praising Pedro's ability, but saying he needs to improve mentally. And you pointed out a nice little parallel between João Pedro this season and Julio Enciso last season. Would you like to share that with the group?
Yeah, I think it's an exact parallel. The difference is perhaps that Pedro has been more impressive from the outset than Enciso last year. But as many will recall, De Zerbi was really critical of Enciso, his effort. He had the big game at Chelsea, and then he sort of didn't perform up to par after that. And De Zerbi was really critical about sort of the rest of his performance in that game. And I think this is De Zerbi just being this mentality monster. He's going to push. He's going to get the absolute maximum out of you. And as great as João Pedro has been and all the accolades he's been given, and people like me saying he was the man of the match in our first game and in our preseason games, to say out of possession he hasn't been quite as good. We need more from him, as he said in the press conference. Right? He's just leaning in, and I think what's so beautiful to see is him leaning into João Pedro now gives the opportunity to Enciso to step into the 10 role. And what does Enciso do? The very thing that he wasn't doing last year. Play incredibly unselfishly with 2 beautiful assists, right? Those are plays that I'm not sure he would have made one of, let alone both of, at this time last year or even late last year. But he's grown into himself, and I think that speaks volumes to De Zerbi and how he pushes these guys. And it's that balance of he's asking more, he's singing the praises, he's asking more, and just pulling the very, very best out of them. Sort of, it's a difficult balance to strike as a coach, as a manager, but I think De Zerbi is just a master at it.
He really is. And I think it's, we've seen over the last couple of years, players leave Brighton and Hove Albion and not particularly hit the heights that they've done. I mean, thinking about Basuma in particular at Spurs, although it's really pleasing to see him start ticking, pushing on now. Ben White had a bit of a start at his Arsenal career, and we've just seen today, our midfield monster and Moises Caicedo have an absolute howler for Chelsea, which we're all finding very funny. Sorry, Chelsea fans. But it goes to show you that the coaches, and especially Roberto De Zerbi's, how he changes people. We will talk about him a lot today. Solly March. You want to see what Roberto De Zerbi can do for players? Look no further than Solly March, a player that has scored more goals in 2 games now than he scored for 3 seasons, like a couple of seasons ago. Solly is just the epitome of what Roberto De Zerbi does for players. So let's get into the game then. I think the first half was a bit of a cagey affair, and I think we saw very much the sort of Wolves team that played well against Manchester United in their opening fixture. But it didn't take Brighton long to get on the scorecard. I think it was about 15 minutes. Now, I want to give this goal in particular the time it deserves, because they didn't really talk about it too much on Match of the Day, which surprised me because I thought this goal, Chloe, was very Maradona-esque. Let's refresh your memory from the Molineux. Kaoru Mitoma picks up the ball on the left-hand touchline, not too far into the Wolves half, and he dribbles it pretty much all the way into the Wolves box, breezing past 3 or 4 players. They can't get near him, and he slots it past Sarr. One of the most exquisite solo goals you are likely to see. Now, I don't know if you know this, Chloe. I don't know if it's been shared widely, but Kaoru Mitoma apparently has a thesis in dribbling. I think we saw it on display yesterday.
No, I've never heard that myself. No. Yeah, it was just a brilliant goal, the way he picked that ball up, and they just couldn't get near him. I think they tried fouling him a few times, but it's just like that chant, he's just too good for you. And it was just like that. They could not get near him. And yeah, I just remember going, go on, back of the net, just as he hit it. And it was back of the net. And yeah, it was just such an incredible goal, such a great individual effort. And yeah, it was really good to get that first goal. And it was just such a good goal from Mitoma. And I think quite often he seems to sort of dribble down the side and sort of end up crossing it in, but this time he sort of dribbled down the middle and actually got the shot away himself. And it was a great goal, great finish, and yeah.
It really was. I was down at Eastbourne Air Show, kind of like having my phone in front of me, and I was jumping up and down on the spot as I was like, go on, as you say, like it was just mesmerizing. And Sony, I think it would be fair to say, I've been quite not critical, but I've been quite underwhelmed with Kaoru Mitoma in pre-season. He was excellent last week, but he was a bit underwhelming in pre-season. And the tail end of last season, he didn't seem to be wanting to take players on as much. But wow, what a goal. I mean, you talk about taking on players, 3 or 4 players in the Wolves team. They just look like concrete in their boots. And as Chloe says, one of the Wolves players, Semedo, who incidentally got a red card at the Molineux last season for fouling Mitoma. The only way that they were going to stop it was by bringing him down. Sony, what did you make of our magical Mitoma's wonderful goal?
I actually was just watching it before I hopped into the shower and got ready. It was like 5 people. He literally was just going around them left and right, and these guys would try to catch up and they would just fall behind, and their keeper tried to stop it, but clearly he was out of place, and it just was one in the net, and you can just see everybody like freaking out. I remember seeing a little bit of that goal when I was at work, which, by the way, I'm not allowed to watch games at bars on Saturdays because I work, and I've been officially banned from watching a match on Saturdays, according to Stateside Seagulls guy. So I have to keep working until we lose at some point. But just seeing that goal at work, my coworkers just kind of looked at me. They're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "We scored a goal, guys. Like, Mitoma scored a goal." And yeah, you're right. He was very much not willing to get up in front of players and like do his thing. I feel like he had some sort of hesitation. Maybe he wasn't sure of himself or something. Something must have happened because he was really good at one point and he was scoring goals. And then all of a sudden he was just kind of like off. So maybe like an assist here or there, but he wouldn't really be doing what he was known for. And so to see him kind of score, on his own today was kind of like, oh, maybe he's back, I know people have been very critical of him. Obviously, the Japanese fan base is always going to support their man no matter what. Shout out to those guys. Um, but I'm happy that it looks like he's maybe getting back on. Maybe Deserby was like, yo, you need to get it together. Like, I understand maybe there's something going on, no big deal, but clearly you need to get it together or you're just going to not be on the field and get those playing minutes. So, I'm happy for him. I'm happy. He actually might be back.
Dagan, what do you make of it? I mean, we've seen Simon and Dagan scored last week against Luton, had an amazing pre-season, really looked to be snapping on Mitoma's heels. De Zerbi has said that he has set a target for Karim Mitoma and Solly March to score 15 goals this season. Do you agree with Soni that it's that, again, going back to that mentality, getting those players believing in themselves, saying to Karu, this is what you're good at, go and do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sense of competition to be, a locked on starter at this point when the games really matter. And I think we're seeing that across the sort of front line for sure. What stood out to me about this particular goal that I think is different from last year is that this was such an example of what we typically see from him in a long ball. So, Steele might play a ball over the top and he'll run onto it. But to see him do it cutting inside, where he usually sort of will make his way around the perimeter and cut in, outside the box, here he made a hard cut into the middle of the field. And it was clear to me, Wolves just expected we're going to be able to give a foul here. The players coming from the inside, they seem sure like, oh, there's going to be a foul, play will stop, we'll be fine. And then each one of them was reacting late, thinking the previous one was going to give the foul, and they just couldn't wrap him up. What struck me is he looks like he might be a little stronger, like maybe just a little extra work in the weight room on his lower body, maybe his upper body, but just to fight through that contact. And then, it could easily be lost. I mean, he had runs like that last year, especially late in the year, where he didn't finish. And we were sort of, clutching. Oh, I can't believe he could miss. But, it's a fickle game, right? I mean, those finishes, the touches, it doesn't take much to be off. And I think, he's been a great player for us here for the better part of a year now since, really De Zerbi gave him a big opportunity. What we see from him consistently is that every couple of games, at a bare minimum, he's going to come up with a moment of brilliance that's highlight worthy. And it's hard to keep players like that out of the lineup because of what they're capable of. The striking thing is now we have so many guys who are capable of those kinds of moments that we really can rotate them and not feel like we're losing a ton.
That's actually a really good point because, as you say, I mean, I don't want to give the impression that I don't rate Carew. I do. I think he's a phenomenal player. But there were times last season, as I say, especially towards the tail end of the season, where you had to play him because, as you say, Dagan, it could just be one moment in 90 minutes that could change the game. But even if that moment didn't happen, we didn't have the depth to bring someone else on. Now we do. And I think, your early point was about competition. If I was Carew and I was seeing Simon Adingra coming off the back of a really good year at Union Saint-Gilloise, which was actually better than Karim Mitoma's year at Union Saint-Gilloise, scoring in the pre-season stateside games, scoring on the opening day at Luton, I'm going to be thinking, I need to pull up my socks. So hopefully, that will spur him on to greater heights. And as you say, look stronger. He can ride those tackles a bit more, whereas last year he might have gone down. But no, it was a sensational goal, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that in the goal of the season contenders at the end of the year, because it was a thing of beauty. My words aren't doing it justice. Go and watch it again right now. Pause Albion Obsessed. Pause it. Go and watch the highlight of that video again. Then come back and then just kind of join us in the Wow, what a
Yeah.
goal!
I'll share with you because I think it's fantastic. My daughter, when Mitoma will score a goal of that ilk, will do the call from the game. And I assume you guys got the call over there, but he's done it again. That line, like she will say that when Mitoma scores. Mitoma, he's done it again. It just, yeah, I love it, right? I mean, yeah, he has this singular sort of popularity. I think we gave the goal its due here with all of us talking about it. But what an incredible moment.
Yeah. I'm assuming now that you're back with us, that you've watched the Mitoma goal again, and we can continue. Is that okay? Is everyone okay? Brilliant, fantastic. Let's talk about. We would be remiss if we didn't talk now again about Jason Steele, Chloe, because Wolves, they had their chances, and I think one of the things that was in the Manchester United game for them that were wasteful, and in this game they were wasteful at times as well. They had a couple of chances. Steele had to make a big stave. From Silva, who we looked to be trying to play offside. He wasn't. Kuna released him. And I think, it didn't help Silva's cause that, he sort of he ummed and ahed about where he was going to put it, but still had to make the save. How was it in the Molineux, kind of in that first half where it was still a bit cagey? How did it feel? Did you feel like Wolves were going to get back into the game, or were you confident that we could keep them out?
It was still a little bit nervy. I think it always is when you're only one goal up. And they did have some good opportunities. Still did really well with his positioning with that goal with that chance you mentioned. But yeah, I was feeling a little bit nervous, wanting to get a second as soon as possible. And I do think they probably should have done better with the chances that they had. And right, I really want a right back, and I really want a Caicedo replacement because I do think we need that. I don't think we should be giving teams as many chances as Wolves have, because I think a better team would have taken those
So I
chances.
was watching Match of the Day with my dad this morning, and I said to him, teams like Liverpool and Manchester City, or even teams have got that attacking prowess like Spurs, they can have it with Son. Manchester United, if they're on their day, even Chelsea when they're on their day, they're going to find it a lot of joy playing against our midfield. I mean, I think we've got a lot of very capable midfielders and a lot of capable cover at right back, but we don't have an out and out right back. We don't have a Moises Caicedo monster in the middle who's able to break up those sorts of plays. And teams, we've seen Luton, and Chloe, you mentioned on the last podcast about how many touches Luton had in our box, and it was a scary number of touches. And a team like Manchester City will just punish you for that. So if we want to, and I'm sure some of the teams we play in Europe will as well. So if we want to, kick on with that, we need to really make sure we strengthen those areas. And I know there's still, just under 2 weeks left of the transfer window. So hopefully we can get those players in. Andy Naylor tweeted out today about the Belieber, young lad Belieber, coming on for a few minutes in his game, seeming to suggest that it might be a farewell. So that could be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Dagan's got his fingers crossed, audio listeners, and I have as well. And as we had a bit of a chat in our Seagulls Worldwide Telegram group about the need of a out and out right back. As many of us believe that the club don't have a single right back. And it is very telling, Dagan, that we're relying at the moment on a 37-year-old James Milner to play at right back. That's slightly worrying for me. What are your views on Milner? Because no doubt he's an excellent player, but a right back, he is not.
He is. I think what struck me yesterday was I question how much we'll be able to play the combination of Milner and Gross together. Because I felt like at times if they got a little bit forward and the other team came into possession on the left side, that there was a good chance they were going to produce a chance out of that, because we could not get back in numbers quick enough. What I saw us do differently yesterday, and I think this was the adjustment that De Zerbi was talking about, we got more guys behind the ball anytime possession sort of, stalled for them and we could stop the initial attack. But we looked in the first half painfully vulnerable to counterattack. And I thought Gross really had a hard time in the midfield. I think at right back, his anticipation is so good that he gets back well. But I'm just not sure both of those guys can be in a defensive enough position that allows them to just anticipate, right? At some point, they've got to be faster. And Milner is pretty fast, but Gross looks to me a step slower than he did last year. And I don't know if there are games where he's in the midfield, he may need to be in a more advanced role at the 10 where he's not having to track back and be an essential person defensively. Both of them, once we did get bodies back, acquitted themselves very well and looked great. But it was just that transitional moment of getting back where, for me, there was a lot of heartache and worry as to, what we were going to be able to do. And it just seems teams are already, as they did last year, they're not going down Purvis's side, even though he's advanced. It seems like teams sort of have the mindset of we're gonna go up the opposite side from Purvis. And at the time, it was Purvis and Caicedo that were usually on that side of the pitch. So, but I still think teams' plan of attack is to come after us. Gilmour was sensational, and I thought made up for a lot of issues. But we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on there, Dagan. I think Gross is best operated as a 10, whereas yesterday he was more of the 8 and Gilmour was more of the 6. And it would be really nice to see an out-and-out right back at the club. I thought a few times yesterday, Chloe, that Adam Webster, he took the ball into midfield and then but then would lose it, or when we were countered, I think it was in the first half. I think it might have actually been for that Silva chance. He got turned incredibly easily, and then we were on the back foot, rushing back to try and stop the chances. What did you make of Adam Webster's return into the side? Were you happy with the display you saw? Because a lot of fans on social media were a bit surprised that he took that position over Jean-Paul Van Heck, who had a reasonable game against Luton. What did you make of Adam Webster?
Yeah, I thought he did all right, especially considering sometimes when he's been out injured, it takes a while for him to sort of get up to speed. But I thought he had a decent enough game. He did get caught out a couple of times, but I think we did well to recover, and we were just lucky that Wolves aren't very clinical, so they didn't capitalise on it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, as we've said, Wolves weren't particularly clinical, but we can't necessarily rely on teams not being clinical when they hit us, because we will face tougher challenges. But we can't just focus on the negatives. Dagan, you mentioned one of the main men there, Billy Gilmour. He had a sensational first half. I felt he was very busy breaking up play, very accurate with his passing. We will talk more about his passing in just a moment, but generally speaking, that first half, Billy Gilmour was the standout performer for me.
No, I agree. I think I said as much in our chat. When we looked shaky, he looked like the guy who was keeping us together. And that's, you need that player. I would love to have a partner with him that was maybe a little bit more of a ball winner. But I thought he performed ably in that capacity. But it does give me pause. It does give me worry, because I think he's best as a McAllister. I think he's at his best, being able to win the ball and get stuck in, but also as a real distributor. And he unlocked some of our key sequences. I know you're going to talk about the passing and the numbers behind that later, but it was an impressive all around performance in a game where we had 4 guys with 2 goal involvements apiece. For many folks to cry out that he was the man of the match, myself included. Just a stellar performance from him.
What did you make of Billy Gilmour, Chloe? For me, and I put this on our group chat, for me, he is the one man in midfield that I would start consistently. Do you agree with Dagan? Do you think he is almost the Alexis McAllister replacement, and he needs the Caicedo replacement to play alongside him?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think Dagan's spot on there. He's such a good player, but yeah, I do think he needs a Caicedo-esque partner in midfield. And so hopefully we can get that for him, because, you know, then he can keep doing what he has been doing. Excellent passes. Some of his balls are just incredible. Like the one for the third goal, it was just like cut right through their team. And it was just, yeah, I think he's a great player, and I think he could be a real standout this year for us.
Let's certainly hope so. And let's move on to the second half then, where we can talk more about Billy Gilmour's balls. 3 goals in the space of 8 minutes. What a start to the second half it was. And it killed the game off. Let's talk about Purvis's goal then, Dagan. A really nice ball over the top from Solly March for Danny Welbeck to chase. Danny Welbeck hits the ball quite cleanly, I thought, and it was parried by Sarr, but only into the path of Karu Mitoma, who I thought actually did really well to put that ball back into Purvis's path, because when I was watching it, it felt like there just wasn't enough power to get the ball from Mitoma to Purvis. But thankfully there was. Purvis, he slots it away, 2-0 to Brighton. What did you make of the second goal?
I mean, a work of art. That whole sequence is one of those, like, you know, great offense beats great defense every time. Like, there's just a certain level of quality where no matter how right the defense does it, they can get beat. And that ball over the top from Solly was such a ball. Welbeck had a great strike. I thought that was his probably best moment of the match. Just giving it a full blast right at the keeper. I thought Saad did really well. He parried that ball off almost to the sideline, trying to keep it from being a corner. And Mitoma just, scooped it and deftly guided it into the path of Stupinan, who made a great run and then finished. But that sort of being shot out of a cannon, I think is what happened to us at the half. And I don't know if you guys have seen the video that was shared by a Wolves fan of the teams coming out after halftime. But the Wolves players were sort of calmly, walking out of the tunnel after the half, and you hadn't seen any Brighton players. And all of a sudden, I think it was Gross that was first. And then the entire Brighton team just comes like running out in between and among the Wolves players, sort of on a sprint. And that's sort of what happened over the next part of the game, is we just looked more up for it than they did. I don't know if that was noticed at the game too, but it was, when I saw the video, I was like, that is just, as a coach, that's everything. That's your dream. And whatever De Zerbi said at halftime had to light a fire under our guys, because we came out just with, the team that we think we have, the team that we believe we can be. We were in that 9-minute stretch with 3 goals, and we'll talk about the others, but just a moment of class again. I mean, and that's, it's not a given to score 4 goals in a game. I'll talk more about that later.
Chloe, were you surprised by just how galvanized the team were when they came out? Because they seemed to be, as Dagan says, they seemed to be really up for it. And as I say, those first 8-9 minutes of that second half it was like dreamland.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. As you said, living in dreamland, really. Singing "We're effing brilliant," and we are top of the league. Now you better believe us, we're going to win the league. Maybe not, but yeah, it was just brilliant, and the fans all loved it. We were very much in high spirits, and I just couldn't believe how good we looked in that sort of 10 minutes. It was just like bam, goal, bam, goal, bam, goal. It was, it was just the best, probably the best 10 minutes I've seen from us ever, to be honest. So yeah, it was really something.
And something it was. I mean, let's talk about the third goal then, because that third goal, as you've already alluded to, Chloe, it all started with Billy Gilmour, who I think won the ball back. So I think, Billy Gilmour wins the ball back. He lofts it long over the top to Enciso, who's rushing down the left. And what a cross from Julio Enciso with the outside of his foot. And Dagan, you've already mentioned it earlier in the podcast. The unselfishness. Last season, Enciso would have tried to score that himself, but he didn't. He puts in a pinpoint cross, and March, who's running onto it, hits it into the roof of the net. A fantastically well worked goal there.
There are plays like that where often guys end up left with their arms out at their feet. I was here. Why? How did you miss me? Right. I mean that, and we saw some of those in the preseason. And I think already we're seeing this team gelling, coming together, getting experience playing together. Chloe's point earlier, the ball from Gilmour unlocked the whole thing. It was exquisite. And then Enciso's pass reminded me a lot of the ball Mitoma played with the outside of his foot from the right-hand side from the left-hand side to Ferguson running onto it. If you remember that pass, it sort of bent around the defender. It was a similar type of pass, but this was a run with reckless abandon by Solly March. Both of his goals really were coming from out of nowhere. Just I'm gonna get there, and he did. And hearing him interviewed about it, he seemed sort of in a state of disbelief for being the leading goal scorer in the Premier League, but gave all the credit right to Julio for the pass for both of them. It's just a great moment, and I think that's what we're going to see from this team all year. Is that when we click, we are a big old snowball, rolling downhill, gathering more snow, and it becomes overwhelming. It's an avalanche, and it's exciting to watch. I think if we don't shore things up, maybe we could see games that do go in the other direction against us, because they do think we have some vulnerabilities right now. But man, when it's clicking, it's beautiful.
And it was certainly clicking, because it wasn't even over, Chloe. The same double act got in on it again. Julio Enciso, Solly March clips it in. It hits the post and goes in. As Dagan says, Solly March is currently the top scorer in the Premier League with 3 goals in 2 games. This is the man that Lewis Dunk said was the most boring person he's ever met. But he's certainly not having a boring start to the Premier League season. What did you make of Solly's goals, Chloe?
Yeah, he just did brilliantly to get on the end of those. I mean, it was both incredible crosses from Enciso, but yeah, March did really well as well. I do think March and Enciso isn't a duo I knew I needed, but yeah, I love it. They're such a good pairing up front, and yeah, they just did really well for both goals, and they just cut through their defense like a hot knife through butter, and it was just so great to see. I didn't actually see who scored the fourth goal, but the second one that March got. I wasn't sure if it was like an own goal or something, because I couldn't really see up the other end. But putting a ball like that into the box, it's not too difficult for someone to get in on the end of it, even if So yeah.
And that's the thing. You put the ball in the box, something is more than likely to happen. And we've seen it with Solly March last week with Evan Ferguson. And for many years, Brighton were very guilty of trying to walk the ball into the net. So it's really refreshing to see us putting those balls into the danger areas, and for players to have the confidence to hit them. And Solly March in his post-match interviews was talking about the confidence to, have a go. And he was actually quite unlucky, I felt, to not get a hat trick, because later on in the game, he cut inside, and as he often does, and he drove a low shot straight at Sarr. But yeah, Solly March hat trick, something I need to see in my life, because for a man who's been with the club for such a long time, it's so nice to see him do so well, and being a local Sussex lad as well. In my opinion, just makes it even more special. So the Albion 4-0 up, but the Brighton goal lived somewhat of a charmed life, especially towards the end of the half. There was a moment where the ball was just pinging around all over the place, hit the woodwork, I think. And I think Jason still had to, make a very acrobatic save to hit it over, which resulted in a corner. And from the resulting corner, Wolves managed to pull a goal back, which did at the time feel like quite a soft one to concede. Hwang Hee-chan, his header, went across the goal, and Jason Steele was just rooted to the spot. He had, the Wolves player in front of him there. the other Wolves player kind of like crossed him in the front. So I don't necessarily blame Jason Steele for that. Dagan, do you feel like Jason Steele was a bit unsighted for that one?
No. I mean, I thought he got beat of the possession's merit, not of any failing on his part. Like I said, sometimes good offense beats good defense, and I think that was such a case. I thought he had a great game. Acquitted himself really well. To me, I think from about the 60th minute on, we really were pretty switched off and just cruising to the finish line. Even when the subs came on, which I was surprised, but it's hard to bring the level of energy to keep piling on when the result is in hand. And I mean, with the number of injuries we've seen at that point in a game that's 4-1, I think your hope is not keep scoring goals, but let's get out of here without anybody getting hurt. Because I mean, we're seeing players drop like flies in a way that we did not see last year. And so I'm wondering if there's, an after effect from the length of the season last year, perhaps, that, we didn't see it last year, but it's sort of the cumulative effect of shorter off season, guys getting back in. But, knock on wood, hope that we can avoid those disasters that are befalling the likes of Villa and Chelsea and others.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, Dagan. I hadn't thought of it that way. So, yeah, an interesting one. Food for thought there. Do you think that's fair comment, Chloe, that, after going 4-0 up, the Brighton sort of, took their foot off the gas and just were quite happy to, get to the end of the game without any injury concerns?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely did take our foot off the gas a bit after once we were 4-0 up. Mind you, my mate next to me blames me for Wolves' goal because right before I said, I know it doesn't really matter because we're 4-0 up, but I really don't want them to score. And literally 3 seconds after I said that, the ball hit the back of the net. So it's my fault that we conceded and didn't keep a clean sheet, I'm afraid. But yeah, I was hoping to score more. I always want to score more. I'm just greedy like that. If we could win each game 10-0, I'd love that. But no, you're probably right. It is better to just manage the game, see it out, rather than risking any sort of injuries.
I think, goal difference undoubtedly does play a part in it, but, as you say, it's better to be safe than sorry. But the fun wasn't all over because late in the game, Wolves got themselves a ridiculous red card. It's just a bit of a daft move, wasn't it, Dagan? Nunes pushing over Webster and then Purvis in the Brighton box. Just when you're already on a yellow card, just really, really stupid behaviour.
Yeah, it's textbook self-inflicted wound, frustration foul. Just lost it. Just lost it. It happens in sports. Youth, immaturity, frustration, all the things. And again, I mean, this is a second consecutive humiliation for them at our hands, right? I mean, in front of their crowd. It seemed like the frustration boiled over, not just from those on the pitch, but maybe to some of the Wolves fans off of it, as we saw. I don't know if Chloe, you were exposed to any of that or not, but it looked like it was quite the scene.
Yeah, there's the video doing the rounds of the is it the box that's behind the away fans, like the Wolves, like the boxes there of some of the fans in there conducting themselves in less than polite. I'd like to apologise to all the Brighton fans because that is not how we do things in the Black Country, and I'm very disappointed with you, Black Countryites. You've let us down. Before we get on to like the post-match stuff, Chloe, I just want to mention the return of Adam Lallana, who came on at about 85 minutes for his first minutes since January. So Adam Lallana's been out of competitive action for a long time. Was it nice to see Adam Lallana back? I know we saw him in some of the pre-season, but for him to actually play in the Premier League again, nice to see for me. How was it? How did the fans respond when he came on the pitch?
Yeah, I think it was really nice to see. I think he's just one of those players that really sort of shores it up, sort of a mature head to have on the pitch, which I think is quite important. We've got quite a young squad, so he characters like him, like Milner and are very important, I think. And he looked all right. So yeah, it was good to see him back, and hopefully he can get fit and firing.
That is certainly the hope. I think Adam Lallana just makes us tick in a way that not many other players do. We've got some stats. I love a good stat. Let's share some stats, guys. Brighton have visited in the last 20 visits at the Molineux. Brighton have won 10 of them. That's a pretty fantastic statistic. It's also a reason that Chloe has to go to every single game now, forevermore, that is played at the Molineux, because whenever she goes, we always seem to win. So, don't know if you're superstitious, Chloe, but
Oh yeah.
tough. You've kind of got to go to the Black Country every year now. Dagan, you shared this with us as well, and it's a really good stat. Brighton start the Premier League season with successive 4-1 wins, and there's a great stat about teams that tend to score so many in their opening 2 games. Would you like to share it with us?
Oh, it's not an opening 2-game stat. It's any 2 consecutive game stat. So teams that have won by 3 while scoring at least 4. So that discounts 3-0 wins, but 4-1, 5-2, or anything greater than those numbers. The teams that have done that in back-to-back years since 2018, 2019, it's a pretty wide range of teams. I think it's happened 9 different times prior to, or teams have done it in 9 different seasons. So I think 3 of those are City, I think 2 Liverpool, 2 Arsenal, 1 Newcastle, 1 Spurs, and then us. But up to this point, all of those teams prior to this year and us have finished in the top 5. Just sit that there. Teams that have won 2 games by this margin consecutively. And I'll tell you, the bulk of them were back-to-back home games. There were not many of those that were a home and away set. Most were back-to-back home games where the schedule sort of fell favorably. Teams won 2 big ones at home. So it's, people might dismiss it as, oh, this is just Luton, it's just Wolves. They're both going to go down this year. But we were talking about before the pod, right? And those are teams we often struggle with. Wolves away last year, we won 3-2. This is a better performance than that. Against almost all the relegation sides that ended up being relegation sides, we had, I think, only 1 win where we won by 3 goals, and that was Leeds very early on, the last Graham Potter game, where we won 5-2. The rest were 2-goal games, or in some cases, I'm sure we drew or maybe even lost to some of those teams. But nonetheless, I think what we've just done could easily be dismissed. This is 5% of the season. I know everybody talks about it. Nothing matters. Every game matters. Every point matters, as we saw last year, and how narrowly we, escaped Villa to get that last spot. So to be in this position is incredibly enviable. To have done it in the style and fashion that we have by running away with games late. I hope we see more of it, and I think we will. Really, really exciting times to be a Brighton fan.
It certainly is. I mean, it's not often that we can come to the end of like a game week and say we're top of the table. Chloe, I think, Dagan points out something that's really quite interesting. And a lot of our opposing fans might say, well, it's only Luton, it's only Wolves. But these are historically teams that we don't tend to play too well against. You pointed out off air, Chloe, that last season when we went to Forest, the team that went up through the playoffs in the Championship, we got absolutely destroyed. So we shouldn't dismiss these games, because we tend to play worse against teams that are going to be near the bottom. And I think, as you say, the bookies have got Luton Town pretty much down already. And, Wolves, a lot of people are, thinking they will go down as well. So do you think it's fair that people are not criticizing, but are going to just respond with, oh, yeah, but it's only Luton, it's only Wolves?
I mean, I do think you have to keep some sort of perspective, but we do. Sorry, my cat is being a cat. I should probably get her out of here. So I'm just gonna.
We love cats on the Albion Obsessed podcast. We have Curtis's cat, we have Chloe's cat, and they're always up to mischief. So there you go. But no, I think it's you're right, Chloe. You've got to keep things in perspective. You've got to keep it in context.
But also, we are top of the league.
We are top of the league, and we're also going to welcome Soni back. Soni, welcome back. I hope your fire alarm was okay. We've kind of gone through the game, but just as you're here, I'd like to get your opinions on the 3 goals that we scored in the second half. for to make it fair. So, what did you make of our second half performance, Soni?
Second half performance was by far very good. When I was watching the first half earlier, I was like, okay, I can see why people were saying it was a little shaky. I could see like there were some definite holes, there were definite opportunities that we could have like gone for, but we just didn't for some reason. Definitely Welbeck could have finished maybe at least 1 or 2 goals, but he just decided to stop. And I know for a lot of people that was very frustrating, and seeing it again, like bigger and not at work, was like, oh, okay, I could see why that's the thing. But Estupinian got a goal. That was amazing. And then Solly March, I'm sure you guys already talked about it. Solly March over here, man, just scoring goals. All right. Like he's out there. He's literally out there doing his thing. And like you said, it's all about the mentality. So whatever De Zerbi's putting into these guys' heads, it's working. And I want it to keep working.
It really is. I mean, the opening 2 games, we've scored 8 goals. We've got 6 different goal scorers. And that's the 13th time in 34 Premier League games under Roberto De Zerbi that Brighton have scored 3 or more goals. It is really exciting being a Brighton fan. As we spoke about at the top of the show, it wasn't that long ago. We were crying out for attackers because it seemed to be the one thing that we were lacking. And now we're seemingly scoring for fun. With all that being said, though, let's talk about our player of the match, because I'm very interested to hear who it goes to. I'll start with you, Chloe. Who was your player of the match as the person who was there at the Molineux?
I'm going to go with Billy Gilmour.
I like it. I like it. Very good. Very good. Very good. Soni, who was your player of the match?
I'm going to go with Billy Gilmour.
Ooh, I think we might get our first Albion Obsessed clean sheet of the season. Dagan, player of the match.
Wow. Well, look, I mean, I came into this with Billy Gilmour as my man of the match. I think I even responded to his post-game tweet saying as much. He is my man of the match, but I have to say, because he kept us ahead when it looked like we might not be, and got us into halftime with a lead. And I feel like he was the most instrumental player in doing that. What Solly did after the break was tremendous. And I think if I had to give another man of the match, the ball that he sent over the top that unlocked Welbeck's shot was beautiful. And the 2 runs he had, maybe Enciso makes a great individual play and finishes, but if Solly doesn't go on those 2 just really dynamic runs to get on the end of the Enciso passes, and of course Enciso picked him out, right? Why there's a case for a lot of folks, but I'm gonna go with Gilmour with a strong runner up to Solly March.
And now you've said that, Dagan, I don't think we really gave Solly the credit for those runs, because they were very good, and you can make the argument that Wolves should have defended those a lot better than they did. But as an attacker, you've got to take your chances, and Solly did that very, very well. I myself will also give it to Billy Gilmour. I think, as you say, he just kept us ticking. His pass completion, he had 1 pass. Yeah. Didn't reach its target. 1. I think
69 of 70. 69 of 70.
I know, it's crazy.
99%, bro. Yeah. That is some good stuff.
His ground duels were really good. His interceptions were good. He was putting in good numbers. So I think for the second game against Wolves on the trot, Billy Gilmour has put in an absolutely sensational performance. Roberto De Zerbi said that Enciso was the best player on the pitch, which is fair, because I thought Enciso had a really good game and really unselfish. But it's another one of those performances where I just feel like the team are more than a sum of its parts. And it takes everyone working together to bring out the best, because you look at how much money certain clubs have spent, and yet they still can't seem to win. And there's us quietly going about doing our business, not spending overly much money, and
money
just
can't buy wins. Money can never buy wins. Okay.
Exactly.
We say the same thing in baseball. We basically say the same thing in all sports, right? You can throw money at players as much as you want. You can grab the best talent in the world and put them all together, but that doesn't guarantee you a win at all. Like, it's all about the mentality, it's all about the training, it's all about like how they get, along with their teammates. And I don't think that a team in particular that we all know about understands that. And, at one point last year, they were having issues with just like how to fit the pieces together. They bought a puzzle, but they didn't really know how to put them together. So I just remember, money does not buy teams, nor do they buy wins. Thank you. That's my TED Talk.
And what a TED Talk it was, Soni. And what I like that analogy about the jigsaw, this idea that you can buy the pieces, but unless you know how to put it together, it doesn't matter. And it's quite fitting then, because we're all talking about Chelsea. We know who we're talking about. They've just played our next opponents, West Ham, and lost 3-1. Thank you, Moises, for giving away that penalty last minute. Thank you, mate. We have a fantastic record, Chloe, against West Ham. We've never lost to them in the Premier League. And last season, it looked like that might be tested because they bought Danny Ings. They've just bought James Ward-Prowse. And the Danny Ings hoodoo and the James Ward-Prowse hoodoo go against us this time, or next time, I should say. But can we keep this amazing record against West Ham going?
I really hope so. I do get nervous. I get more nervous when it's a team that we normally beat for some reason. It feels like at some point they've got to get one back. But also, I don't think we've ever won 3 straight games in the Premier League, have we?
I don't think we have, no.
So that also makes me a bit nervous that we're not going to get the 3 points. But you know what? We turn up, we play our game, we should be able to beat them, I think.
I'd certainly like to hope so. I mean, it's only one thing that James Ward-Prowse will give West Ham, and they scored one today, is an edge at set pieces. Now, set pieces have often been the Achilles heel of Brighton defensively. It's how Wolves managed to score yesterday as well. Do you think set pieces are going to have to be a must on the training ground this week?
Absolutely. If it's not, I don't know what else they can do. Just seeing the corner, because I also saw that game this morning, just seeing the corner kick turn into a goal and everyone's like freaking out. And I'm like, oh, they can actually score a corner. Great. But no, set pieces definitely have to be a focus this week. That is probably going to be a major key.
Yep, and Dagan, they're going to be very buoyant after beating Chelsea 3-1. Do you see this being a walk in the park, or do you think this is going to be probably the most challenging game we've had thus far?
I went into the game watching West Ham Chelsea today thinking I didn't want West Ham to have a stinker. Narrow win, draw, fine. Didn't want them to come in sort of feeling desperate. And I think, they're coming away. They're sort of fat and happy after a, proverbial big 6, victim sort of claimed against a team that has beaten them, 6-0 aggregate over last year. I like us. I feel really comfortable going into this game. They've got a lot of new pieces to work in. I think they probably will score off a set piece against us. In all that research that I did not see a team in the past 5 years that have won 3 consecutive games by that 4-1 or greater margin. So I'm going to say we're going to be the first team in the Premier League to win 3 such games consecutively. So another 4-1, 3 consecutive 4-1 wins for the Albion is my call.
Oh, damn. I say, Dagan, if you get this one right, man, I'm going to need to buy you a beer. I'll send one to your local bar or something. I'll save you the money. Chloe, what do you think the score prediction will be? As I say, normally a very good game against West Ham.
I'm going to go 3-1.
I like it. A nice, confident 3-1. I assume a 3-1 to us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Thank goodness for that. Soni, what's your score prediction, please?
I'm going to go with 2-0 with us winning.
Oh, I'd like that first clean sheet of the season as well. Dagan has gone for 4-1. I'm going to go... I think I'm going to go with 4-2 because I like us scoring I do think they're going to pose a threat with set pieces. James Ward-Prowse has, he's continually been a thorn in our side. However, I think that we'll have enough in attack to put them to bed. We've got more than Chelsea in attack, in my opinion. So I think we can win it, and I'd like to go on a 3-game, win streak, continue, our romp to the Premier League title. So let's see what we can do. Yeah, I think it's this blooming optimism, Dagan, that you've brought on this podcast. How dare you? How dare you bring all this optimism, you and Soni? I'm used to our beloved Aaron saying, "Oh no, lads, it's going to be a loss." So, but no, thank you very much to Chloe, Soni, and Dagan for joining me this evening. And thank you, listeners and viewers as well. If you are watching this on YouTube, let us know your score predictions down below. Let us know who you think makes the starting 11 next weekend, because I think it's going to be a bit of a starting 11 roulette this year about who gets to start. Who was your man of the match, and what is your score prediction for next week against West Ham? Leave them all down in the comments section below, wherever you may be, whenever you may be. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already, but we'll see you next time. Goodbye.